Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Retirement Compass, the show dedicated to helping you successfully navigate to and through your retirement. I'm your host, Kristen Oakley, and joining me are two financial advisors from Stonebridge Wealth Systems. We have the co-founder, Tim Kulhanek, and partner, Jeremy Gove. We've got a really important conversation that we want to share with you today. It's going to be all about retirement income planning and specifically, how can you create greater tax efficiency throughout your full financial plan? Tim, Jeremy, excited to be back in the studio with you as always. How are you this week?
Doing great, thanks.
Good.
Yeah, very good.
And I know you are now a dad of 3. That's very exciting.
Yeah, I'm an old veteran at this thing now.
A girl dad through and through, right?
Yeah, that's all we make at our house is girls. We're having a lot of fun.
Yes.
I'll try to maybe share a picture sometime on the show of the 3 girls. The 2 big sisters are pretty excited to be big sisters, but one thing I found is they always want to hold the baby.
Oh, yes.
But I've got to really be careful and be there to spot, because when they're done holding, which lasts about 45 to 60 seconds and they've had enough,
right?
They just kind of go,
right. You're like, no, don't drop the baby.
You can't drop the baby.
Right.
Delicate. We have to be very, very delicate with baby. Baby is precious cargo.
Yeah. Aw. Well, I know you've got a good mentor in Jeremy here. You are also a girl dad, right? So.
Yep, I got 2 girls, one in college and one in high school. I think she's in college. So.
Yes. Oh, man. Well, I always enjoy this time with you, and I so appreciate the thought and intention that you put into each one of these shows. And we're going to be talking today about your retirement income plan. And again, specifically, how can you create greater tax efficiency in your financial plan? We're also going to be sharing with you for the first time on this show a very powerful resource completely free to you that previously was only available to existing clients of Stonebridge Wealth Systems. So you're definitely going to want to stay tuned to find out more about that and what it can mean for you. But we have some research here, and this came out from a recent Allianz Life and study that they did, and it revealed significant concerns about retirement income planning among Americans. They found that nearly 50% of investors worry about how to take distributions from their retirement plans, while 44% admit they have no retirement income plan at all. Many look at retirement, and I think this is true for the state of where we are today as a nation. A lot of people think, I have this pot of money, right? What's your number? That was a big campaign that came out several years ago. People think, oh, I have this amount of money. That's my retirement income plan. I'll just take from it whenever I need it and hope I don't run out of money, right? But it's so important to break it down and understand what you have, especially from a tax perspective. So can you shed some light on what we're talking about here?
Yeah, so when we talk about income planning, we're talking about where are we going to take our income from in our retirement years. Mm-hmm. I also read a recent study where it said a lot of people are absolutely terrified of giving up their paycheck to start drawing income from the money that they've saved, that pot of money that you mentioned.
And it's a hard transition, right?
It is. It's
to go
hard
from
transition.
Saving to spending it.
Yeah. So, I mean, you don't know that paycheck's not coming in anymore. And so I think that's one of the reasons that most people don't actually have a plan, because that's one of the things that we do as Americans. When we're scared of something or we don't understand it, a lot of times we'll just put it off, you know? And so let's talk about a couple of challenges when it comes to income planning. Number one is we're living longer.
Yes.
So the longevity of planning for retirement. If you think about when Social Security was actually created, the average life expectancy was 62 if you're a female and 58 if you're a male. So let's just say that the average was 60. And Social Security actually started, you were eligible to draw at 65. And so it was created not to be a retirement income plan, but it was more of you survived longer than most of your peers, so it's a safety net. And so that's really what it was for. And so the fact that we're living longer, that creates a bigger burden on how much do we need in our pot of money, right? So that's one. And then the other one that we talk a lot about is inflation and rising costs. It's interesting now when we do these shows and we do workshops, when we're talking to new clients or prospective clients, we used to have to explain what inflation was.
Yes.
Nobody asks, I mean, everybody knows what that is now, right?
Right, loud and clear over the last few years.
If you go buy eggs or food or whatever, we understand that. And so one of the interesting statistics that I found is healthcare costs actually have exceeded the CPI costs of the average goods that we're buying. So the average consumer goods and services that inflation on that is 3.5%. If you go back 20 plus years, actually go back to 2000, but on healthcare, it's actually 5%.
Wow, yeah.
So we're not only planning to live, but we're also planning on paying for healthcare costs, and there's a lot of other things we're having to take into consideration,
right,
that we may not be paying for while we're still working.
Yes.
Our healthcare is probably taken care of by our employer. And so those are all things that we need to take into consideration.
For sure. And you talked about our longevity. That's almost the big domino that affects all these things. Because in that specific example, the longer you live, the greater potential there is that you're going to need more healthcare.
Absolutely.
Which means higher costs, right? And it's just a longer span of time that we have to be planning for. So then we couple that with inflation and the cost of living doubling. We couple that with market volatility. That's another huge risk. But also taxes come into play. And so explain why it's so important for folks to understand how every type of dollar they have saved up for retirement is going to be taxed.
Yeah, so it's the new retirement frontier. It's the reality that so many people have been using the same strategies to plan for retirement and going through retirement as what maybe their parents' generation used. But that's essentially using a 20th century tool to a 21st century problem. So we've got to fix that.
Right.
I believe, and our team of experienced advisors at Stonebridge believe, that the number one threat to retirement security today, a lot of people say it's market volatility, it's inflation. Those are all threats.
Sure.
Healthcare costs,
Yep.
major threat. In my opinion, the number one threat to retirement security today is actually the threat of rising taxes. Why do I say that? Well, let's look at the data. If you look at his 2010, the landmark book by David Walker, former comptroller of the U.S. government, right? Comptroller General of the U.S. government, basically the lead auditor and lead accountant for the U.S. government. He wrote back in 2010 that tax rates may potentially have to double in order for the government to make good on all the promises they've made. Now, we all know the national debt is really high, and if you don't believe me, just go to usdebtclock.org.
Make sure you're sitting down.
usdebtclock.org. Okay, you can go to that on your own time on your computer, and you'll see exactly the problem we're talking about and how big of a problem it is. Boston University economics professor Larry Kaltikoff, he's talked about this. He kind of is most well known for what we call financial gap accounting. So he doesn't just look at my assets and liabilities, what have I spent versus what do I have in the bank, so to speak.
Right.
He looks at, well, what about over the next however many number of years, how much am I going to bring in versus how much I'm going to spend? And if you look at the financial gap accounting for the United States government, which they usually go over a 75-year period for things like Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, that gap, the U.S. government would actually need roughly $239 trillion in a bank account earning treasury rates today in order to make good on all the promises they've made to things like Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and pay the interest on the debt. So in summary, we've got a big, big problem.
Yep.
Now, to add to that, a lot of people disregard the fact that if they've got $1 million in their 401k, you don't own all that money, okay? You've got somebody that's acting as like a silent partner. And the problem is they can change the rules at any point in time during the game.
And that silent partner would be?
Would be the IRS,
Yes.
right? And so the reality is that's a huge threat. What I like to say is the IRA has become an IOU to the IRS. It's a growing, building, ticking tax time bomb, and it's a lousy estate planning tool. So we need to reframe our thinking. So many of our clients that come in, or I should say the people who are coming in and become a client, when they first sit down with us, they see like on RMD, the required minimum distribution. We've got to reframe from minimum to maximum. We need to start planning for those taxes, and we have a few tools that can help people do that.
Yes, so I'm very excited that we get to share this with our television viewers because previously this resource that we're about to share with you was only available to existing clients of Stonebridge Wealth Systems, but you all felt it was so important for folks to have access to this information. This is going to be completely complimentary for you. You have created what is known as a retirement tax bill calculator. So we're going to put the site up on the screen for our viewers. There it is, stonebridgetaxbill.com. Can you explain what this tool is and what it's going to show someone when they go to that site or click on that QR code?
Yeah, so it's a great calculator. It's simple to use. You just plug in all the information, all the money that you have in your 401k or IRAs, money that we would call that's tax deferred, where you likely have that silent partner, the IRS.
Right.
And so you plug that in, and then you put in your age and your expected tax rate, and then you hit submit, and you get an email that's a full report on exactly how much taxes you would potentially owe over your lifetime. And then it gives you a scenario of if you were to convert some of this money to a Roth, what would that look like and how much tax savings can that be?
Yes.
And that's something that we actually do daily with our clients and with prospective clients when we sit down and as we're walking them through a financial plan, specifically the income plan, we look at, okay, how much taxes do you have? Like Tim said, we're looking at RMDs. So we're looking at how much taxes are you gonna owe today? Let's say you're 62 or 63 years old. What will that look like when you're 73 and you have to start taking RMDs out? And a lot of times people are shocked that the taxes go up fairly significantly a lot of times because that RMD is pushing them into a higher tax bracket.
Yes.
And so if that's you at home, that you are sitting there thinking about your retirement and how much income, how much tax you're going to pay, and all of those things, I would encourage you to fill out the tax bill, fill out the tax calculator, and then sit down with our team and we can explain to you how to put those solutions that you're finding into action. So just give us a call. The number's listed. Use the stonebridgetaxbill.com, or you can click the QR code to take advantage of that, and we would sit down with you at any time.
Yeah, I was going to say, once folks go to the site stonebridgetaxbill.com and you see side by side the difference between what the government's tax plan is for you if you do nothing versus how much you could potentially save in taxes, you're definitely going to want to give Tim and Jeremy a call and get together with the team of Stonebridge Wealth Systems. So again, we invite you. This is a great opportunity. What they would love to do is be able to sit down with you for no cost, no charge, no obligation, simply an invitation to have a conversation, to get your questions answered, see how they can help and serve you. And if this tax bill is a concern for you in your retirement, they'll be able to help walk you through what some potential tax saving strategies might be for you. That number to call to schedule your complimentary appointment is 866-256-7778. Or if you want to connect online, if you pull out your smartphone, you can open up the camera app, just point, click, and scan that QR code that you see there down in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. That will take you over to a landing page, ask you a few short, simple questions, and a member of the team from Stonebridge Wealth Systems will reach out to connect with you to schedule your complimentary meeting that way as well. Don't go anywhere. We've got a lot more to cover regarding how to create greater tax efficiency throughout your full financial plan right after this.
I own a motel I was able to buy out of college. When I actually ended up buying the motel, I was leaving. I had just passed the life and health license, and I was gonna sell Medicare supplements and long-term care. I told the owner of the motel that, hey, I'm gonna be leaving. I was giving him a 6 months heads up that, hey, I'll train whoever you wanna bring in. He said, I'd actually rather sell you the motel than bring in a new manager because he never showed up. So he didn't have to do anything. It was kind of like an ATM for him. And so, when you own your own business, there's a lot of people that got to be paid. There's marketing that has to be done. There's a lot of different dynamics that go into running a motel. It actually taught me to think outside the box a little bit. And so I started looking around, what are other things I can do? Because I really liked helping people. I liked solving problems for them. And there's a big difference between selling something and actually finding solutions to problems. When you're thinking about personal finance and managing somebody's retirement for them, they've worked for 40 years saving all this money and now they're retiring. They're turning this over to you to take and run with it. So it's a big deal. I think we can always do stuff better. There's always room for improvement. And so I want to read as much as I can. I want to study as much as I can so that I can do a better job for my clients, which they're counting on me to get the job done for them.
Welcome back to the Retirement Compass. I'm Kristen Oakley here with both Tim and Jeremy, financial advisors from Stonebridge Wealth Systems, and we are talking today about the importance of creating greater tax efficiency throughout your full financial plan, specifically when it comes to your retirement income plan. As you guys mentioned already earlier in the show, taxes are one of the biggest threats to folks' success in retirement. And it's not about how much money you have, it's about how much money you get to keep. And we want you to be able to keep more of your hard-earned money. So I'm curious, as you think about these strategies to create greater tax efficiency throughout someone's income plan, what are some of the key things that you recommend folks do in order to optimize their income in retirement?
Yeah, so one of the first things that when I sit down and we put a plan together, one of the first things that I show them is where their assets are at. Mm-hmm. So are there almost all their assets in their 401k, mm-hmm. which would mean tax deferred, or are they in different accounts? And so that's one of the things that we try to stress is utilizing different taxation or different types of accounts that are taxed differently.
It's like tax diversification.
It is
right?
really. That's really what it is. And so we want to have some money in a taxable account, which that could be a savings account or a money market account or whatever. We want to have some money in tax deferred. We want to have some money in IRAs or 401ks. And we want to have some tax-free accounts. We want to have even some estate tax-free accounts, and so those are some things that we may talk about in a future show. But the point is we want to spread our tax liability around. So when I'm drawing income from my accounts and I notice I'm getting really close to the upper limit of that bracket, let's say I'm in the 12% bracket, looking at jumping into the 22% bracket.
It's a big difference.
Maybe I take money out of the tax-free account for the rest of the year. And then, I can adjust my income accordingly. So it's either you use the government's plan or you have a plan yourself. And a lot of times, the people that we sit down with and talk to, they don't know how to do that plan. And so that's why we need to sit down and talk to people.
Well, and it's not just about that lump sum of money. To your point, it's about having the right withdrawal strategy of knowing which account to pull from when, for what purpose, in the most tax efficient manner, right?
Yeah, so if you think about it this way, sometimes we talk about asset allocation, and that's what most people think about when they think about a financial plan is how much do I have in stocks, how much do I have in bonds, right?
Yep.
But you also have to talk about asset location, which would be what type of investment do I put in which type of account? Because some investments are maybe more efficient to be in a tax-deferred or tax-free account versus a taxable account, right? So one example would be if you own a municipal bond, tax-free municipal bond, in a IRA, you're not really getting any additional tax benefit to that, right? If you own mutual funds in a taxable account, well, mutual funds, if it has a lot of turnover, which you can go just to like a Morningstar or somebody like that, Yahoo Finance, and see what the turnover rate is on a mutual fund. If it has a high turnover rate, that means that they're buying and selling a lot inside that basket, which means they're going to pass through a lot more of capital gains distributions to you. And so you're going to get a pretty big tax bill, and that's inefficient. Here's what I would say. In a rising tax rate environment, now I'm not saying rising this year, I'm saying if over the next 10 to 15 years, if David Walker, right, the former Comptroller General of the US government, knows what he's talking about, I think he does, if the folks at Penn Wharton, right, the Penn Wharton budget model, if their math works, really it comes down to math when we're talking about things like taxes, then tax rates are likely to increase and potentially substantially over the next, let's say, 20 to 30 years. So in other words, over your retirement, those that are viewing this show, in an environment like that, there's a mathematically ideal balance to have in each of those first two buckets that Jeremy talked about, taxable and tax deferred. Everything else needs to be, any surplus over that should be shifted to the tax-free bucket. You just have to do it in the right way. We can show you how to do that. That's one of the things that we specialize in at Stonebridge. Along with that, we're gonna make sure that we're squeezing every bit of juice we can out of each different potential income source. So in other words, we want to make sure that our clients are getting the most bang for their buck and not dripping nickels, so to speak.
Right.
So we're going to help you maximize your Social Security as part of that complimentary written financial plan. When you come in and visit with our team of experienced advisors, you're going to get a Social Security analysis. And the thing with Social Security is it's really complex.
It is, yes.
The Social Security handbook itself is 2,728 different rules that kind of outline all the provisions of the program.
There's over 567 mathematical calculations of how someone can claim their Social Security benefits, right?
And then to make, if that wasn't enough, to make matters worse, it's called the Program Operating Manual System, and that contains probably another 100,000 rules to explain the 2,728 rules. And so one thing, for example, just happened this past week is I had a client reach out and she said, you know what? My situation has changed. My mom came down with an illness. I need to be there to take care of her because my dad's passed away. There's no caretaker. So I need to retire a couple years early. And she said, Tim, I'm really worried about Social Security because I was at a family gathering recently and I was talking to my cousin and she told me that Social Security is based off your last 5 years of work.
Oh gosh.
And if I go 2 years, because she was gonna delay 2 more years before she drew Social Security, if I go 2 more years not drawing Social Security, I'm gonna have zeros for 2 out of 5 years and it's gonna just kill my Social Security benefit. I think I should file today. I said, you know what, I can appreciate that because this is a very common question we get, but that's not how Social Security works. And so I would just say for our viewers out there, if you have questions like, well, when can I draw Social Security? How is the benefit calculated? By the way, it's the highest 35 years of your indexed earnings. They come up with a formula, but it's 35 years, not 5 years, and it's the highest 35 years. So they're not gonna take that year if it was a year you were only working part-time, but you had other years that were higher. Even if it's not the last 35 years, they're gonna pick out the highest 35 years. Our team understands how those programs work. We've studied it for the last 15 years. We've been teaching classes on Social Security for over a decade. We can teach this to you as well, so that way you understand what you have, what your options are, and ensure you're maximizing your benefits. But at the end of the day, it comes down to taking action. And there's really two types of people when it comes down to this. There's people that just kind of fly by the seat of their pants, and they're kind of a passenger on the ride through life and let life circumstances dictate their lifestyle to them. And then there's that take action. They see a program like this and like, you know what? I need to make sure that I'm getting everything I can out of Social Security, because an extra dollar from there is an extra dollar that I can defer and allow to grow in my own portfolio and my nest egg. That's a reason why you should absolutely give us a call today. The number's on the screen right there.
Wonderful. Tim, Jeremy, thank you so much. If you are ready to take that action, we encourage you, pick up the phone, call that number on the bottom of your screen, 866-256-7778, to be able to schedule your complimentary written financial plan. Or again, if you'd like to connect online, you can simply scan that QR code and that will get you connected as well. We'll be back with more here on the Retirement Compass right after this.
My story started when I was in college. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I knew it was going to be in the financial industry. I took a lot of accounting and finance classes. I thought I'd probably work in like a bigger company and work my way through maybe the accounting department. But then when I was doing a internship the summer before my senior year, I walked into a business. I was trying to sell magazine ads. I don't know if I call it magazine ads, but basically ad space in the back of the UNK student handbook and planner, which was a difficult sell because, nobody uses pen and paper planners anymore, at least not college students. But I made my best pitch to some financial advisors. I happened to be Scott Noctegal that I met with that day. When I went for the close and tried to see if he was ready to sign up for some ad space, he said, yeah, no, I'm not interested in that, but it takes a lot of courage to have somebody to be willing to walk into a business, especially a business that really doesn't cater to your target audience, to put yourself out there in a way that the odds of you being successful are probably pretty low. That's the type of person we'd be looking for at our firm. Have you decided what you want to do? And I said, no, I really haven't, but I know I want to work with finance because I like numbers, and math's always been my favorite subject, and working with kind of complex equations, almost like a puzzle. And so that's really where it all began.
Welcome back to the Retirement Compass, where today we've been discussing how to create greater tax efficiency throughout your full financial plan, specifically your retirement income plan. Guys, it's interesting. It's mind-blowing to me that so much of our industry is only focused on investment management and on the accumulation years. But when you get to retirement, you have to know where your income's coming from, and you have to know how you're going to generate it for the rest of your life to be ongoing, reliable. And it's important to understand how to create a tax-efficient stream of income. And that's why we've devoted this entire conversation to that. What are some other strategies or things that you want our viewers to be aware of?
So I think it's important to just do reviews, right? I mean, if you're already drawing Social Security or you have money coming in from a pension, I think the biggest thing is just to do an annual review. What am I getting? Am I getting what I'm supposed to get? People do make mistakes. Social Security makes mistakes. In fact, we had a gal in the office just recently who, doing the review, she had already started drawing Social Security, and then her husband, who was younger, actually started drawing Social Security later, right? Well, at that time, when he started drawing, she was at her full retirement age. And so she thought she should get a spousal benefit. Her benefit was way lower than her husband's, and so she should have been getting a spousal benefit. When we called Social Security and talked to them, they said she doesn't qualify because she was already drawing, which is inaccurate. And so they actually ended up fixing it. But this went on for 3 years.
Wow.
Do you know how far back they went? Not very far. It was a few months that they actually gave her back. So,
right.
So they lost, their whole family lost out on that money for 2.5+ years because they didn't know.
Right. Well, and I'm glad you're bringing this up just real quickly, because as you both know, I used to travel nationwide presenting on Social Security, and the Social Security Administration can give you information, but you must verify that it's actually accurate. But most importantly, they can't give you advice based on your personal situation. The only way you're going to get that kind of personalized advice is by sitting down with financial advisors such as yourselves, who know the rules ins and out and also can look at someone's overall picture to figure out the optimal time for them to claim. So important point to bring up.
Yeah, absolutely. The second thing that I would bring up is just adjusting for market conditions. So we like to utilize different investment vehicles. We talked about that briefly. Maybe you have some investments in an annuity where your principal is not at risk. You can't lose money. It can't go backwards. So that's a good opportunity to take income from that when the market's down. So I'm not drawing money and compounding the problem when my, let's say my IRA that's invested in the market is dropping. And one study that I found, we were talking about Roth conversions earlier, but the Center for Retirement Research found that households utilizing the tactic of Roth conversions saw a reduction of potential tax liabilities by over 20%.
Wow.
So if you think about that, that's 20% more money that they had that they didn't give to the government.
Yes, yeah. Well, and that's the point, is when you're creating greater tax efficiency for folks, we're not talking about tax evasion or anything like that. We're talking about using the tax code to help people not pay any more to the IRS than they're legally required to pay.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the reality is there are tools out there, there are strategies. We talk about on this show, we talk about QCDs, qualified charitable distributions. I just did a tax workshop the other night and I said, raise your hand if you've heard of a QCD, what a qualified charitable distribution is. I'm not profiling, but the majority of the people in the audience probably were eligible because you have to be 70 and a half or older to take advantage of this opportunity. Not one hand went up.
Wow.
And so there's just a lack of education. So the genesis of this firm, Stonebridge, right, the team that we built over the last 15 or so years was really based off of trying to fix financial planning from financial product sales to creating a comprehensive plan that'll help people get to and through retirement to be able to retire and stay retired. And so what I would tell you is if that's you and you're like, you know what, I have stuff, I've got the financial junk drawer, but I don't have a plan, I don't know how all these puzzle pieces are supposed to fit together, we've solved the puzzle. It doesn't matter if it's 300 pieces, 500 pieces, 1,000, we've got a team that can help you solve yours as well.
What a beautiful analogy. Great way to wrap up this discussion. Tim, Jeremy, thank you so much. If you would like help putting all the pieces of your retirement puzzle together, the team of Stonebridge Wealth Systems would love to be able to help and serve you. We know that a lot of this might be new to you. It's not new to Tim and Jeremy and the team. This is what they do day in and day out, and they would love to be able to do it for you. 866-256-7778 is that number to call to get your complimentary written financial plan. Thanks so much for being here. We look forward to being back with you next time here on the Retirement Compass.